Okay. So I'm going to first pose to you a mathematical probability, okay, to help your mind sort of grasp the likelihood of this. In an ever expanding, constantly moving universe, based on the Big Bang Theory, which is the globe theory,
Yeah.
what is the mathematical likelihood, right, with the millions and millions of miles of distance? What's the mathematical likelihood of the sun and moon appearing the same size and eclipsing in the sky visibly?
I'm not sure. Probably
It would
really
be
small.
highly, highly improbable, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that should be the foundation upon which you ask the question, can I just believe that mathematical impossibility is just a miracle?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You could at least go there. So if it's a miracle, then there's still intelligent design being the more likely conclusion. So now we've got maybe a reason as to why they would hide the true nature of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Because if people who are pretending to be in control and have power over you can convince you that they are controlling the earth and not something else, or that it wasn't intelligently designed, it just happened, then you have no reason but to not listen to them. But to listen to them, sorry. So let me present the flat earth hypothesis for you to see if this makes sense, okay? So the sun and the moon appear the same size and eclipse because they are the same size, just like in the yin-yang symbol, just like up, down, left, right, hot, cold, man, woman, right? Everything is in duality. So it fits actually with the rest of what's going on with Earth. Now you've got two bodies, two circular bodies in the sky that you can see that both produce light. You can see that. So we know that all light comes from an electromagnetic spectrum, it's like radio waves, essentially. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, because they both produce light, they both produce electromagnetism, which means they are electric, they produce energy, and they are magnetic, right? So when the sun and the moon go over the salt water, and salt is conductive, it actually draws that salt upwards to the surface and creates a tide. And that's why we have 2 tides a day.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I've spoken to one flat earther before, and I think it's like that guy is what pushed me so far away from the theory, because I asked him like that question. I was like, I'm really curious. And he was like, oh, there's pumps like under the ocean, and it pumps water in and out. And I was like, well, that, and he was like, there's giant rivers all across the world that like the government's hiding or whatever. And it didn't really make sense to me.
Sounds
So
like
thank you
Flat
for
Earth Society.
So let me ask you this, right? That whole entire thing, which is scientific, that I just explained to you, and does actually happen, and you can test it with an electrified magnet at home with salt water, just so you know, you can actually prove this to be true. Let's say, obviously, if it is flat, right, and it's not a globe, and we're not ever expanding, which means it has been intelligently designed because everything is in perfect order in the circle of life, then do you think that they'd have a huge weight in making sure people don't find that out? Otherwise, they lose the perception of having control and power over you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would probably need to employ people to convince you that it's still a globe if you're close to figuring it out, because that would be a pretty powerful truth, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So merely searching or asking others for the answers won't always work out. I'm not saying it can't, like in this case where I'm just sharing truth I've learned, right?
Mm.
But if I was to Google flat Earth, how does the tides work? I'm going to be met with a lot of opposition when I don't even have a foundational basis on how the Earth operates yet. So before I even get my foot in the door, they're already going to make sure that I disbelieve it, right? Because there would be so much emphasis placed on making sure you don't believe in flat Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you weigh it up too, you've got like NASA, you've got TV, you've got Barney, Teletubbies, every single thing you've ever watched, even the introductions to movies, including throughout the movie, suggests that we're on a globe. So if they are lying to you, right, and there's actually enough evidence to suggest there's a reason why they would, as I said, with the mathematical likelihood of the sun and moon and the clear explanation on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
they absolutely would have to invest large amounts of effort, time, money into maintaining a lie. Just like when you tell somebody else a lie, it gets bigger and bigger, and you have to put more and more effort, and you have to try to remember what you said, right? It's the same thing for them. So the best thing you could do is figure it out for yourself. And I could tell you the most best key to that door is to look at electromagnetism.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also happy to, if you've got anything popping up in your brain that says globe, I can point you in the right direction.
No, that I think that clears it up for me. Like that makes a lot of sense.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have like a question about like, so if so I don't even know. Like, let me find a way to formulate this. So if I'm assuming when you say like them, as in people who are trying to hide the truth, you mean just like a general like collection of world governments and people in power, corporations, whatever. Why wouldn't like churches or like places that believe in intelligent design, why wouldn't they be encouraging like the flat Earth?
Man, that is such a good question. Like seriously, you're very thoughtful to even think of that. Are you aware that the churches are now registered to the government?
Yeah.
They have a registration. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And do you believe in all the laws of your government?
No.
Okay. So you know, right, that for that kind of destruction to exist in an organization means it was created from the outset incorrectly.
Yeah.
Right? It can't have been created correctly, or that kind of chaos and destruction couldn't exist in it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So to ask the question of, why would the churches basically oppose flat Earth even, right? Why wouldn't they believe it even though it's in their own Bible, it's in their own text? Well, for that very reason. The government is pushing the globe model, right, on you from when you were 5 or even younger in their schooling system, which we know has lied to us because we don't use many of the things we learned there. And a very vast portion of them are wrong.
Yeah.
So if that's true, we've got every institute that is connected to government is actually operating incorrectly to its own ideology. Right, schooling is for education, but it does not do that. So it's operating incorrect to its own ideology. You've got the court systems, right? They're incorrect as well. They punish people who've done no harm. So they're operating incorrectly to justice, their own ideology. And then also you've got churches who even with their own text, their own book, basically deny the truths within it, are obviously operating in an incorrect ideology as well for their own ideology. So what's the connecting factor between all those organizations?
The government?
The government, absolutely true. Now, would you believe for a second that the government is in charge of itself? Or do you believe there are people higher up than the government who are in charge of that?
I mean, yeah, there's a hierarchical structure.
Absolutely. Okay, so see how it becomes a pyramid? So it's not the church that's the problem. It's not the courts. It's maybe not even the pharmaceutical, all the different things that are going on at the lower levels, right? You go upper level. Okay, now we've got to government. But hold up, there's people behind the scenes that push the government. So you go up again. And you find actually there's very few people that are really pushing the lies. It's everybody else being ignorant to them that helps them be manifest.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like the church, I believe that's the wrong question to ask. It's always better to cut the root off of something. Like, when you pull a root out, that's the better way to do it. If you just cut the leaves, it keeps growing back, right?
Yeah.
So you got to get to the root. So it's instead of like, say, targeting the ideologies at a church, right? That's the wrong way to go about it. Because they are in ignorance. They have absolutely no idea about even that pyramid. You'd first have to give them the foundation about the pyramid before they could even begin to see the church. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And sorry, that was quite a lengthy answer, but I think it just kind of puts into perspective.
I think you summed it up really. It was very articulate. Yeah. So who would be at the top then? That would be my question, I
guess. Essentially, this place is either creation or destruction, right? You got sunlight, you got fire. Two different versions, two different things of the same coin. They both produce light, they both produce heat. One creates, one destroys, right? Mm-hmm. So at the foundational basis of this reality, everything is energy. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Everything is some form of energy, right? Mm-hmm. So at the very, very top of that pyramid, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, it's just the idea of destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell whether something's true or a lie and whether it creates in you or destroys in you. So when you feel about, say go into your feeling, your intuition, your instincts about the globe model, that you're just a speck of dust spinning on a ball through nothingness for no reason. Does that feel like creation or destruction?
Probably, yeah, it feels a little bit more like destruction. I mean, to me, it feels very depressing, I suppose. Like nothing really matters.
Okay. And the truth would be in you. You know you matter, right? You know that's the truth, right? Obviously, you have to matter or you wouldn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So right there is how you figure out the truth from a lie.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Same with people, right? You would find that with people. If you paid attention to how you felt, whether they're building creation or destruction in you, hey, you find out, man, I wish I'd listened to my intuition or something, right? Later down the track. It applies across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So on the other spectrum of destruction, which I'm sure you've noticed by now, most of the earth is part of, right? Is more destruction a lot of the time.
Yeah.
The whole idea of that is to keep you viewing that. To keep you viewing destruction. Because if destruction can keep you viewing that, you're giving your energy, your attention to that. I mean, say you believe in quantum physics, right? That the electrons are aware when we're looking at them. What if it's just your awareness is energy alone? What about, say you're in a room and someone keeps looking at you? Doesn't it feel like they're giving energy to you?
Yeah.
Because it's attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point is to keep you trapped and giving your attention to destruction. And your seeking of meaning, your seeking of purpose has led you to flat earth.
Mm-hmm.
Just be careful that the powers that be that root from that basic energy source of destruction don't destroy your being.
Mm.
You see, because like even I'm sure you've got to a point where if you believed in flat earth, what does that mean for you socially? Have you thought that?
No, not particularly yet.
Are you thinking that now?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So
It's
that's a truth that you'll have to come to, right?
yeah.
But I suppose if you can't be true to yourself around people, right? And they're going to either disrespect you or make you feel like you're stupid or whatever for being open-minded or being in your truth, aren't they distraction of you?
That makes a lot of sense.
There's literally always we have a choice to choose destruction or creation. And it seems your choice to be created led you to this possibility.
Wow, thank you. That's very. I think that helped me a lot. A lot.
That's okay.
Definitely.
And don't
cleared a lot
believe
of
for a
things up for
second.
me. I'm sorry.
You don't have to be a scientist. No, don't apologize at all. You don't have to be a scientist to understand the truth of reality. How fair of an intelligent creator would it be to put everyone here equal, born equally? As newborn babies, we are all born nude, we are all born equal. To put us all here in that blatant fashion that we can all see, because that's how things have been and always will be when we're born. And turn it into, you need a certificate, you need a degree to understand your reality. You have to be basically given approval to do so. The truth is around us everywhere. We just have to ask the questions. We just have to test things. So don't think for a second that you can't figure out every single answer to what the earth is on your own if you just ask.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I feel like I'm just sitting and nodding a lot to you, but I just want to like take in as much info as I can.
Does a part of you still think they went to the moon or into outer space?
Nah, I've never believed we've been to the moon.
See, wow, look at your intuition.
Felt so weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, this system tries in every single facet to dupe you. And even your intuition was still overriding that automatically.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always had like really big doubts about this. So I think this definitely helped. What like do we do you like specifically believe that a lot of the images we have of like space and other planets and stars is fake, or do you think it's real to some extent?
I'll tell you what, I'm a photographer for a living. Okay, so I have access to really good photographic equipment and Photoshop. When I first found this out, there was no way I was just going to believe anyone. I absolutely knew I'd been lied to about everything else. So I needed to do it on my own. I wasn't going to believe any single person. And one of the first things I did was went onto the NASA website before they changed it. I will profess they have changed it. But you could get all these original images from the moon landing, all these different things. I downloaded a whole bunch of them, ran them through Photoshop because other people had said that when you run it through Photoshop, you can see that it's been Photoshopped. And I'm like, well, I'm a Photoshop expert. I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, I'll know. I can pick out Photoshop in a heartbeat. There's certain integrating factors, such as a change in pixels. You might have a smooth image, but if you increase the exposure or decrease the exposure, a certain area will pixelate in a different square formation than the rest of the image. So you can tell that that's being changed. Anyway, every single image was Photoshopped. And it's not hard to do. I could Photoshop an Earth for you right now, and it would be actually more convincing than what they put out. No joke. I could do a better job than them. This has been frustrating for many years. Their ability in Photoshop is very lackluster, just saying. That might be intentional by design.
Do you still have the original images?
Not to interrupt, but I mean the one that gets me is the uncontained gas pressure. You know, like how can you, like, can you give one example of uncontained gas pressure? Like
What do
all
you
the
mean uncontained?
uncontained gas
Ah.
pressure. Gas
Yeah,
pressure
simple,
that isn't
dude.
contained.
Yeah,
Yeah.
container.
Now
Um,
we just went through from a conversation to a debate.
yeah,
Which was more productive?
the conversation, I'd say.
So, back to that. I mean, do you believe that we could leave and go into space? Like, is there a part of your being that still believes in space?
I mean, reasonably, yeah. I mean, I would think we could, right?
Fair enough. Are you open to me talking about that aspect of things?
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful. Okay, so have you heard the term light particles?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you know that particles are a substance of matter, right? So they're physical? Okay. So you've got the sun that's supposedly like, I don't know, 1.6 million miles or 1.2 million miles away, I think precisely. 1.2
93
million miles
million
away.
miles.
The sun is. Oh, okay. Oh,
Nine-
shit. It's more now. Okay. Well, when I first
Yeah.
started researching, it was 1.2. Okay. So 92 million miles away now. Okay. So that's got light particles coming off it, the speed of light, right? And it's moving through a vacuum. So do we have a vacuum now if there's particles within it?
I just wait. What was the question? Sorry.
Light particles are a substance of matter. They're physical. They move through the vacuum of space. Do
Yeah.
we have a vacuum anymore?
I mean, it would be the vacuum of space, right?
But if there's matter
Yes,
in it,
because
is it a vacuum?
yeah, make sure she understands what the meaning of the term vacuum is.
Vacuum means emptiness, nothingness
Yeah.
inside. It's empty, right? So if we've
Yeah.
got
Absence of
particulates
matter.
inside that material, it's no longer a vacuum by definition, right?
Yeah.
So they're already lying. They would have to know that because they call it light particles and they call it a vacuum. So they literally have to be knowingly lying to you. Or there's only one other option that you can interpret this as. And let's be honest about that. They are incredibly stupid. It's one or the other. And if they're incredibly stupid, you wouldn't want to believe them anyway because they're already wrong, right? Another way we can disprove space is with a space rocket. The only way they'd know that there is space is by going into it, right? They couldn't just guess. So they have to have gone into it if space exists for them to tell us that there is space. So let's assume somehow they have done that. So they've got the space rocket and they've shot it up through the Van Allen belt, right? That's what they'd have to do. Now, that Van Allen belt is supposedly a grand, huge amount of radiation. All the radiation produces heat. Okay, so you've also got the substance made of metal that is going through more heat than you could possibly imagine, more than an oven, more than a glass melting furnace, you know, like more than anything you could comprehend. And that Van Allen belt is what holds in that atmosphere, which is what Nighthawk was talking about earlier with how gas pressure needs to be contained. Well, they say it's contained, and it is because you can get a hot air balloon and it just hovers over the surface and nothing like rotates underneath it. So we must be moving if we're on a globe altogether. So that Van Allen belt's holding the atmosphere. They have to shoot up through it, right? And all the spinning is happening outside of that Van Allen belt. So the universe that was apparently spinning through around the sun, you know, we've got the 1,600 miles per hour that we're spinning, and then we've got the like 200,000 miles per hour around the sun or whatever. So many different speeds, many different directions. So you've got actually 3 opposing directional forces because you've got the tilt on the axis as well. Then you've got a space rocket going through this crazy heat penetrative radiation belt that's holding in the atmosphere. What do you suppose happens when you leave basically no speed and you hit 1.2 million miles an hour or whatever it quantifies to? That is multiple different directions after being heated significantly. You'd burst into smithereens, right? Like there's nothing that could go from nothing to even 1,600 miles per hour and not obliterate.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me
So
for interrupting.
they literally-
The thermosphere is 3,800 degrees Fahrenheit.
There we go. Right.
3,400. Any kind of steel gets melted. Aluminum gets melted at 600 to 800 degrees Celsius. Aluminum alloys and stuff like that.
So there's this thing like karma. Like a lot of people talk about it too. Okay? Like tons of people kind of know this. Like if you do something wrong, you get kicked in the ass later for it. Everyone feels that. You know, that's just what happens. Now, these guys leave that information on the internet for 2 reasons. One, they leave the truth in plain sight so that they're not technically lying to you. It's kind of like you're lying to yourself. That's their belief. Okay, it's not true. But on the other spectrum, they can't hide science because we use it every day on Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So electromagnetism, for instance, there are electricians who understand electromagnetism. So they can't put on Google, electromagnetism doesn't do this when it does. So this is why I was saying earlier, you don't have to be a scientist to actually figure this out because the basic science cannot be hidden. It has to be kept in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look into what a vacuum is and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be a lot easier for you to work out the truth based on science rather than what someone's telling you. Have you seen the bowling ball feather experiment?
Like you drop a bowling ball and a feather at the same time and see which one falls faster?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. So that's a pretty poignant go-to for the globe theory, right?
Yeah, gravity exists.
So when you look at this Earth, right, and you, like say we'll start at the bottom, you look at like the crust, basically, like the layers in the Earth, right? It's literally in these like basically flat layers, like all the way up. You've got the radioactive metals at the bottom that heat the Earth, keep it at a constant temperature, and then you go up from there, and it's less dense and less dense and less dense till we get to the top, and you get like things like sand, like very fine. Right? And then above that, you've got oxygen and you've got the layers of gases that go up all the way to hydrogen and anything else, right, that we don't necessarily know. So when you think about the feather and bowling ball experiment, what they've done is they've got this machine, this specially designed machine that, in my opinion, they specially designed to obliterate creation. And they suck everything, absolutely everything, out of a chamber that they've left that feather and bowling ball in. And they've got this mechanism where they're going to drop them, right? Now, you must know the laws of physics where it says for every force there's an opposing force, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if you remove the opposing force, what's going to happen now? You're going to imbalance, right? So with the feather and bowling ball, you've removed all the atoms, the density, the energy underneath it. So for both objects, there's equally no resistance. So naturally, they're going to fall as fast as they can, as fast as falling allows. Because everything's been removed underneath it. There's no wind, there's no resistance. No, when a feather drops through the sky, the reason it drops so lightly is because it's affected differently by the density than the bowling ball is, because the bowling ball is so solid, so dense. It's like, brr, like cuts through all of that atoms and atmosphere. But if you remove both, what on earth is going to make the feather kind of float down like that? There's going to be no reaction like that because there's nothing there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that theory is biased because of the fact that it's done in a vacuum chamber. So the experiment itself disproves itself, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right? Because it's a biased experiment because the Earth is not a vacuum chamber, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can we prove anything like gravity when gravity is in the atmosphere if we remove the atmosphere? Could it not be that by removing the density, by removing all of the resistance, there is no resistance, and therefore both things would drop at the same rate? So, like, that's not the scientific method even. So they got scientists saying this is science, but it's not. It's not at all science, because science can be tested and repeated for us to come to a foundational conclusion. If you test space, it keeps coming up false. If you test us spinning, it keeps coming up false. Like if you go on a Ferris wheel, right, you can feel the force. You know, if you turn it up faster and faster and faster, you can feel that force on the outside of that. Same with those, it's like a carousel thing at the playground, you know, and you like push your foot and you spin the thing. I can't remember what they're called. But if you stand in the middle, it's not very fast, right? If you stand on the outside, it does get like super, super hard to hold on because all of that force is moving outwards, right?
Yeah.
Now, we're on the outside of this supposed globe. We're not on the inside of it. We're on the outside of it while it's spinning 1,600 miles per hour. How on earth do we even suppose we could hold on when at the local playground we can barely hold on to the bloody toy?
For talking to me.
Wow.
You're very kind.
Wow.
Welcome.
They
Thank you for being
say
so
they say the Earth's on a tilt, right? How do you tilt a sphere?
Hey, I want to say, listen, you gotta.
Oh wow.
I'll apologize for these guys up front. See, we wait for aggressive debate all day long. That's what they're waiting for. They can't help themselves.
Yeah.
It's all right. I don't.
All right.
How do you get a 14 ball? That is so smart, Nighthawk. That is such a good point. I never even thought of that one before.
Well, it's
Damn, how do you tilt a sphere? Like,
Dude.
really?
All right, you just pick up an orange and then just tilt it. Come on.
Guys and girls, it's the angle of the distribution of light that dictates, and the rotation. It's the axis of rotation.
I see we have a glober.
You know what I say?
Houston, we have a problem here.